Some stories begin in the mundane, yet unfold to reveal the innermost essence of individuals. This unfolded on a brisk autumn afternoon within a bustling credit union branch. The building was packed, the long queues and hushed complaints creating an uneasy atmosphere. Staff hurried about, attempting to manage the chaos, while impatient patrons alternated between checking their timepieces and quietly expressing their frustrations. Amidst the commotion, Eleanor Vance, an older woman, waited apprehensively. She clutched a worn envelope, her fingers slightly trembling. Eleanor had come seeking clarification. What appeared to be a minor discrepancy in her account was, for her, a matter of vital importance. But Eleanor was about to encounter something far more significant than mere red tape. Eleanor finally shuffled forward, approaching one of the service counters. She adjusted her shawl, attempting to project an air of confidence, but her expression betrayed a hint of anxiety. "I hope they can resolve this today," she muttered to herself, glancing at the envelope with worry. Meanwhile, one of the credit union employees, Arthur Jenkins, surveyed the room. He cast fleeting glances at the customers and, without a word, seemed to prioritize only those who appeared to possess greater financial means. For Arthur, certain issues seemed more pressing than others. Eleanor, with her well-worn envelope, was far from his priority that day. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, glancing around. She approached the counter and, before speaking, took a deep breath, as if anticipating the need for strength to be heard. Unbeknownst to Eleanor, that afternoon would be unlike any other. Her attempt to be heard would lead to a moment of profound embarrassment, but the unexpected was on its way. Eleanor approached the service counter. The teller, Brenda Peterson, a young woman with a weary and impatient demeanor, glanced up briefly before continuing to type on her keyboard. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I assist you?" Brenda asked, not lifting her gaze from the screen. Eleanor adjusted the envelope in her hands and inhaled deeply. "Good afternoon. I'm here because my account has some charges that I believe are incorrect. I brought all the relevant documentation to try and understand." Brenda finally looked at Eleanor, but her expression was indifferent. She mechanically took the envelope and began flipping through the contents with little interest. "Let's see. Here it is. These charges are standard, ma'am. They're all outlined in your account agreement," Brenda stated, pushing the envelope back toward Eleanor. Visibly disconcerted, Eleanor attempted to explain. "But I can't afford these fees. This must be a mistake. I was never informed about these charges." Brenda sighed and rolled her eyes, drawing the attention of a few people nearby. "Ma'am, perhaps you don't understand how things work these days. Financial institutions have policies, and these fees are automatic." "There's nothing I can do," Brenda responded, her tone laced with disdain. Eleanor felt belittled. The response not only dismissed her concern but also made her feel inadequate. She tried to suppress the tears threatening to surface. "I just want what's fair," Eleanor whispered. Brenda crossed her arms and smirked slightly, as if enjoying the power of the situation. "Fair, ma'am? If you want to avoid fees, you need to maintain a higher balance in your account. That's how it works." The public humiliation had begun. Customers nearby whispered amongst themselves, and Eleanor could feel the weight of their stares. Still, she tried to maintain her composure. "It can't be like this. I simply want to better understand what happened," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. Arthur Jenkins, the manager, was about to exacerbate the situation for Eleanor, but he was unaware that someone unexpected was observing everything. Arthur walked toward the counter with purposeful strides. His presence commanded attention, and Brenda immediately straightened her posture, as if trying to appear more efficient. "Is there a problem here?" Arthur asked, crossing his arms and casting a cursory glance at Eleanor before focusing on Brenda. Brenda smiled nervously. "No, sir. Just a customer having difficulty understanding the account policies." Eleanor, already visibly distressed, tried to interject. "That's not it. I believe there's been a mistake with my account. I'm just trying to get it resolved." Arthur raised his hand, cutting her off. "Ma'am, if you think there's been a mistake, you should have reviewed the contract before opening your account. Everything is clearly stated for those who pay attention." Eleanor stood silent for a moment, taken aback by Arthur's harsh tone. She took a deep breath before responding. "I've always maintained my account in good standing. These charges appeared out of nowhere. All I'm asking is for someone to review them." Arthur let out a brief, almost mocking laugh. "Review, ma'am? What's in the system is in the system. We don't review something that's automatic." Eleanor felt the weight of the humiliation deepen. It wasn't just the coldness of the words, but the way Arthur spoke, as if she had no worth at all. Eleanor looked around, searching for a supportive glance among the customers, but she found only indifference. Some avoided her gaze, while others whispered amongst themselves. Arthur leaned slightly over the counter, looking directly at Eleanor. "If you can't afford the fees, perhaps this financial institution isn't the right place for you." Eleanor opened her mouth to respond, but indignation and shame made it difficult to find the words. She looked down at the envelope in her hands, feeling utterly defeated. Arthur seemed to consider the discussion closed. To him, Eleanor was nothing more than an inconvenient customer. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. From across the room, a discreet figure, dressed in a casual jacket and a baseball cap, had been watching everything attentively. He began to approach slowly, not immediately drawing attention. When he heard Arthur's words, he decided to intervene. A calm and firm voice cut through the room. "Why are you speaking to her like that?" The entire branch fell silent. Every eye turned to the figure who had spoken. The man who had just intervened appeared ordinary at first glance, but within seconds, everyone would realize he was anything but ordinary. The atmosphere in the building was completely hushed. All eyes were on the man who had just spoken. Dressed in a casual jacket and a baseball cap, he seemed unremarkable at first, but there was something about the firmness in his voice and the way he carried himself that captivated everyone's attention. Eleanor looked at the man, surprised by the intervention. Arthur Jenkins turned slowly, clearly irritated by the interruption. "And who are you to question what's happening here?" Arthur said, crossing his arms and furrowing his brow. The man took a few steps forward, slowly removing his cap. When his face was finally revealed, a murmur spread throughout the room. "Ryan Gosling." "It is him!" The world-famous actor was standing right there, and now everyone in the branch knew it. Ryan maintained his calm demeanor, but his eyes were locked on Arthur. "It doesn't matter who I am," Ryan said in a serious but controlled tone. "What matters is why you're treating this lady like this." Eleanor was even more shocked. She looked at Ryan, almost unable to believe that someone like him was standing there, defending her. Arthur took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. "Mr. Gosling, I had no idea you were here. But look, this is none of your business. We have policies at this institution, and this lady isn't meeting the requirements." Ryan gave a faint, ironic smile. "Policies?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "Or an excuse to humiliate someone who's just trying to resolve a problem?" Ryan's presence was magnetic. Even Brenda, who had seemed so confident earlier, now glanced nervously at Arthur, waiting for him to say something to justify the situation. Ryan turned to Eleanor, speaking in a softer tone. "Ma'am, what exactly is the problem? Can you show me what's going on, Eleanor?" Ryan asked gently. Eleanor hesitated, then handed the envelope to Ryan. He took it carefully and began examining the documents inside. After a few moments, he looked up at Arthur. "This is a mistake," Ryan stated. "These charges shouldn't be here. You're going to fix this right now." Arthur started to argue, but Ryan raised his hand, cutting him off. "If this is a mistake, you'll fix it. And if it's not, it's going to be much worse for you." The credit union was silent. No one had expected someone like Ryan Gosling to intervene so directly, but he wasn't finished yet. Ryan placed the envelope on the counter, fixing Arthur with a firm gaze. "I want you to review this immediately, and I'm not leaving until everything is resolved." Arthur was speechless, unsure of what to say. Ryan leaned slightly over the counter, maintaining his signature calm demeanor. "We're not just talking about a simple mistake here, are we? We're talking about how you're treating a customer who deserves respect. And from what I've seen, that's clearly lacking here. Brenda tried to break the silence, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Gosling, maybe you don't understand how the system works. We follow strict guidelines." Ryan raised his hand again, cutting her off politely but firmly. "Strict guidelines?" he asked. "I understand enough to know these fees are completely arbitrary, and I also know you have the authority to correct them." Eleanor, standing beside him, clasped her hands together, still in disbelief. Ryan looked at her, offering a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, we're going to sort this out." The entire credit union watched the scene unfold in complete silence. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Ryan took the envelope back and showed the papers to Arthur. "These statements," he said, holding up the documents. "The charges started 2 months ago, correct?" He looked at Eleanor, who nodded. "Yes," she replied softly. Ryan turned back to Arthur. "And tell me, why did these maintenance fees triple? Because it doesn't look like there's any legitimate reason here." Arthur started to speak, but Ryan interrupted him again. "You might want to think carefully about your answer, because if this is something bigger than a mistake, you and everyone here are going to have a much bigger problem on your hands." The tension was palpable. The employees who had previously seemed indifferent now looked visibly nervous. Arthur knew he couldn't keep dodging the situation. He swallowed hard and stepped back. I'll need to review this in the system," he stammered. Ryan crossed his arms, staring firmly at Arthur. "Then start now." Eleanor watched, still astonished, as Arthur rushed to the computer and began typing frantically. Brenda tried to keep up, but she was clearly panicking. Ryan remained steadfast by Eleanor's side. What had initially seemed like a simple mistake was beginning to reveal something much deeper. Arthur stood up from his chair, visibly sweating. "Mr. Gosling, there's something wrong here," he said hesitantly. Ryan leaned in slightly. "Wrong how?" Arthur glanced at Eleanor, then back at Ryan before finally admitting, "It looks like these charges were applied to multiple accounts, mostly belonging to elderly customers." The room grew even quieter. Ryan slowly shook his head. "That's not a mistake. That's a scheme." Eleanor wasn't the only victim, and Ryan knew he was just starting to uncover the scope of this issue. He was about to expose something far bigger than he had imagined. Arthur, now in full panic mode, desperately searched for a way out, but there was no escape. He was visibly shaken, fidgeting nervously with his tie. "Mr. Gosling, I swear, this was a system error," Arthur stammered, his voice trembling. "It's not something we did on purpose." Ryan narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms. "A system error? How convenient. Why do these errors only affect elderly accounts? Do you think we wouldn't notice?" Eleanor looked at Arthur, her indignation clear. She finally mustered the courage to speak. "So I'm not the only one? How many people have you cheated?" It was clear to everyone in the credit union that Arthur didn't have a convincing explanation. Brenda, standing beside him, looked even more nervous, as if she knew something bigger was about to come to light. Arthur tried to respond, but his voice faltered. I'll investigate this. I need more time to figure it out." Ryan stepped forward, placing his hands on the counter. "You've had enough time. Now you're going to tell the truth." He turned to Arthur, who was now visibly panicking. "How many people have been affected by this? Tell the truth." Arthur swallowed hard and glanced at Brenda, who quickly averted her eyes. I'm not sure. Maybe hundreds." Arthur's confession landed like a bombshell. It wasn't just Eleanor, there were countless other victims. Ryan knew he had to take action. Ryan pulled out his phone and began recording a video. "What you're hearing is a credit union manager admitting that his institution has been charging elderly customers unjust fees to boost profits," he said, pointing the camera at Arthur and Brenda. "This is unacceptable, and we're going to make sure everyone knows what's happening here." Arthur raised his hands, desperate. "Wait, please don't do that. We can fix this. I can fix it right now." Ryan lowered the phone slightly, but his tone remained firm. "Fix it? This isn't just about returning the money, this is about justice. Do you think an apology is enough?" Arthur looked at Ryan, sweat dripping from his brow. "What do you want from me?" Ryan leaned in slightly, locking eyes with Arthur. I want you to make this right for every single person who was affected, and I want the authorities to know exactly what happened here." In that moment, Arthur realized there was no way out. He nodded resignedly as Ryan stood firm, determined to ensure everyone received the respect and justice they deserved. Hours later, the credit union released an official statement announcing sweeping changes. Arthur and Brenda were removed from their positions, and a full audit was initiated to identify all accounts affected by the unjust fees. Eleanor, standing beside Ryan, received more than just an apology. She was reimbursed for all her lost money, along with additional compensation for the hardships she had faced. "Mrs. Vance, on behalf of the credit union, we sincerely apologize for this terrible situation. We are committed to correcting this immediately," said a visibly embarrassed credit union representative. Eleanor looked at Ryan, tears welling in her eyes. "I never could have done this alone. Thank you for believing in me." Ryan offered a small smile. "You should never have gone through this. But now it's not just about you, we're helping so many others who were wronged too." As Eleanor left the credit union, she seemed different, still humble, but with a renewed spark of hope in her eyes. Ryan, standing beside her, glanced at the other customers waiting in silence, clearly moved by what they had just witnessed. He turned to the crowd and spoke with clarity. "Never let anyone tell you that you're worth less, whether you're elderly, young, wealthy, or struggling. Everyone deserves respect, and most importantly, never be afraid to fight for what's right." Ryan's words echoed through the room, earning applause from customers who had initially seemed indifferent. He gave Eleanor a discreet wave goodbye and walked out of the credit union, leaving behind a lesson no one would soon forget. A few days later, the video of Ryan exposing the credit union scheme went viral, garnering millions of views. Not only did the credit union face a thorough investigation, but many victims began recovering their lost savings. Eleanor's story became more than just a call for justice. It became a symbol of hope for many. Respect and justice should be the only rules we follow. May this story inspire you to act with courage and empathy wherever you are. Did this story move you? Share it so more people can feel inspired, and comment #respect is for everyone to join this wave of humanity.